the Vice President for Organizational Culture at RSF Social Finance. I'm also the General Secretary for the Anthroposophical Society in America, which is the U.S. And my relationship to the biodynamic work, and I put it broadly in terms of all the whole field of biodynamics, is, first of all, I'm a deep supporter of biodynamic agriculture and farming, and I've been engaged with the community-supported agriculture movement since about 1987, 1988 or so. Helped Stephen and Gloria Decatur found the first CSA west of the Mississippi, and then just got deeply interested in what the agriculture was about and had the joy of being pulled behind a plow horse and having a very different relationship to the earth because of that, and just supporting them and knowing that I was never going to be a farmer, but I certainly could support farmers in getting done what they're done, because they also need eaters and people to support them. So I will claim that I'm a professional eater, and it's a very important role, because there's a certain consciousness in it that is both not just the food and the nourishment, but also the whole, being part of the whole economy and being a co-producer of the whole farm, not of the food, but of the whole farm activity. So that's very important to me, partly because it's a living example of an associative economic model, inside and out, being involved in the pricing and understanding the budget of the farmers and working with them that way, which was also a view into the whole economic side as well. And then I would have to say the whole food system and the way food is grown, and really what biodynamics stands for in relation to that, and the value of, I would say, the spiritual value and the social value, cultural value of what's possible out of a land-based view of the world. I mean, how we form our agreements around community and the visibility of community that emerges out of that is fascinating to me. And I think it's in many ways modeling another way of being in the world, in a future economy. And of course I always get asked, great, how do you scale that? And to which I say many smalls are beautiful. So we need to make lots of them that are small and beautiful, and then figure out how to pull them together, which is really another level of associative activity. Okay, so dear friend who was a professor of sustainable ag, and his granddaughter came to him and said, I need to do research about 6th grade science fair, right? I need to do some research, and I think you know something about biodynamics, and got any ideas about what I could do as a science project for biodynamics, right? So he said, well, you could collect some soil, say who's a soil scientist, right? So she found an old Coca-Cola case, you know, the wooden ones that have like 12 sections in it, like there are wooden slots. And she went to 12 farms and collected soil samples from 12 farms. I think 2 organic and a couple of conventional and 1 biodynamic farm. And then she went and bought a bunch of worms, right? And put the worms and distributed them out in the case. And 3 days later, all the worms are in the biodynamic soil. What does that tell you, right? And so what do the worms know that we haven't figured out yet? Right? What is that intelligence that knows where health is and seeks health? Right? Obviously, you know, they don't sit there and have powwows and discuss, and you know, otherwise they just know where a healthy soil is. So that's part A. Like, okay, maybe I need to know, right, what that is, and then you can talk about how that happens between compost and living organic systems, and you know, I would say the understanding the role of the farmer as a steward between heaven and earth. And you know, people sometimes go like, whoa, that's like, what's that about? And some people say, oh, I hadn't really thought of it that way, you know? And when you speak of that as a vocation from which there happens to be some wonderful food, it changes the way they think about the food. So, yeah. I think one has to look at a certain lawfulness in nature. And in nature, the lawfulness is the toxins of one system are the nutrients for the next system down. So there is a little hierarchy in, you know, the natural order of things between protozoa, and I'm not going to get into the whole science of that, but there's a picture there of interdependency, right? So you can't have interdependency without quality of relationship. And the question is okay, I know I'm depending on you to get something to happen. What happens when I actually take an interest in you? In other words, I have an interest. I mean, you can't not have an interest if you're dependent on someone. But what happens if I take that and say, I have a dependence, and therefore it's a relationship, and might there be something I can do in that actually reaches out to you, that supports you, out of a sense of reciprocity in that relationship? Two things that you mentioned very directly: people, and then this earth that we live on. And so hopefully they have a connection. If they're disconnected, we have a problem, because the earth is actually, we could look at it as just material substance that we get to use, or we could look at it in a partnership relationship. And by that relationship, I mean as a quality of dependence and interdependence. So we need to give to the earth so that it can give to us. So that's one of a relationship. But then we also, that's sort of each individual's relationship with the earth. That's number one. Number two is we have relationships with each other, which is much more of a horizontal picture. How we tend to those relationships has that's the horizontal view, right? Has a direct correlation to how we have a relationship to the earth. Because, you might say, well, wait, help me understand that. So the correlation is a vertical and a horizontal plane. So why do we go with our relationships? The deeper we have to go with our relationship to the earth, because if you keep widening that, you get to the entire population, and if you follow that line, you get to heaven all the way down to the center of the earth. So if you really build it out, you're in whole system. Even from my standing here on this earth without anybody else around, I'm still in whole system, because I have relationships with others. Maybe a plane made it possible for me to be here. I have relationships with others, and I also have a responsibility to stand vertically on the earth out of a sense of levity, not gravity. I mean, I'm standing on the earth because of the gravity, but I get to stand upright because of levity, right? So that's a whole sense of presence in relation to the earth and to each other that all has to be worked on and sort of cultivated, I can put it in that way. And in many ways, the core of biodynamics is certainly that vertical relationship between the farmer but then why in heaven's earth does anybody grow food as a farmer? So that nobody eats it? Right? It's built into the whole notion of growing food, that somebody will be nourished by that. How could we make the case that this is actually food that is produced with you in mind? But not just you, but the whole of you in mind. Assuming that you actually care about who grew it. And actually, if that, in other words, you're actually speaking to somebody's higher self in a way, but always out of a sense, out of inquiry, as opposed to trying to say, wow, you need to understand biodynamics because of X, Y, and Z. Well, that usually sends people exactly the opposite direction. But to say what really matters to you as a human being, and then bring some of that quality of what biodynamics is about, which is, in a sense, what people really care about is sort of what a biodynamic farmer cares about, right? Health and well-being and nourishment and having good living and all the rest of that. So it just has to tap into people's core values, and then we can layer, the language on top of it in a way. Because it's a wonderful word, hyphenated or not, big discussion. But like any kind of language, it's code for a lot of other stuff that's there. And we forget to sort of check the assumptions at the door about what it is that we're actually speaking about. So it's a little bit of a heart conversation, but you don't get to the heart without a little bit of clearing the space for that in a way. how does one maintain integrity in the face of scale? If you think everything is about scale, then you do set yourself up for compromise, because you'd need 1 million biodynamic farmers in order, and that's probably more than that needed, but just imagine, how many biodynamic farmers are there right now? It's quite exponential growth. And I think it's going to be hard to maintain that integrity. You probably could set a few standards along the way. But if you think instead on a community base and a more localized, regionalized base, I think you can maintain the integrity and build it region by region until you actually have a whole ecosystem of regions. And then you can build scale and maintain integrity. So it's a little association of associations, but many smalls are beautiful, and integrity can be held in that way. So I think you don't necessarily have to assume, if it had exponential growth, that it has to go through that dilution of mission in a way. So, but that's huge work, and oftentimes the folks who are doing the economic part are, they want to grow fast. We need capital, and the consumers always want more to pay less for it. And there's nobody in between, right, who's saying, what's the nature of the culture that's trying to hold this? And what is the thinking that's behind that? So you need to change the entire education system as well, so that people don't come out hardwired as consumers saying, my sole mission in life is to get more and pay less for it. That's rather judgmental, I understand, but in a way that's what's in the field. So, yeah.